They can't hear me? Oh, now you can. All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Maria Cristina Fuentes, and I am the director of the Governor's Office of Youth, Faith, and Family. And it's my pleasure to welcome you back to the Capitol for our 7th annual Lighting Arizona Purple kickoff event. Thank you all very much for joining us this evening. Thank you to everyone who is joining us virtually. We are live streaming this event this year as we launch our statewide campaign to help raise awareness about domestic violence and to show support for victims and for survivors. At this time, we ask that you please stand for the presentation of colors by the Marine Corps Ira Hayes Detachment Color Guard, followed by the singing of the national anthem by U.S. Navy veteran Garland Miller.
Detail. Halt. Lie up. Tight. Present. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming. And the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? Right. Hey.
Thank you so much. That was very beautiful. I've missed these live gatherings and the formality that goes around them all. Oh, you can all sit down. Sorry. Please sit down. I've missed this kind of formality. I think it brings attention and just importance. So tonight, as we come together to raise awareness about domestic violence and show our support for victims and survivors, I want us to think about everyone who is impacted by domestic violence, from the victims to their children, their extended families, their friends, and even the perpetrators. Domestic violence affects an entire family system and has far-reaching impact into the health of our communities as a whole. Our homes should be our sanctuary. Every child, every person deserves a home that is first and foremost safe. And many people here tonight and across our state have given so much to help everyone affected by domestic violence, from prevention work to intervention, support services, and especially the innovation and dedication that we have seen over the last year as so many of our partners statewide have continued to provide critical resources across our state. All of your efforts are needed, they are valued, and they are appreciated. And I'm very grateful for all of you. Since first taking office, Governor Ducey has been committed to supporting families and communities statewide, and he remains steadfast in his commitment to end domestic violence and to provide the resources and services that keep everyone safe, especially keeping children and families safe. We are grateful for Governor Ducey's leadership and his continued commitment to end domestic violence and his support for all of those impacted by the devastating effects. I also want to thank all of the members of our Commission to Prevent Violence Against Women, which is chaired by Elizabeth Ortiz and Kate Brophy-McGee. Your diligent work and feedback is integral to the ongoing work of supporting victims of domestic violence. We're very grateful for many of our state agencies, our partners, law enforcement partners, and especially the service providers across our state who work with victims, survivors, and families every day so they may heal from this trauma. The efforts each of you have and continue to make is what made it possible for the Governor's Office of Youth, Faith, and Family to support and expand the work to end domestic violence within our communities. Through our Stop Violence Against Women Act, the GOYFF invests $3 million annually for service providers, law enforcement agencies, prosecution, courts, to meet the needs of victims of sexual and domestic violence with victim-centered approaches. Currently, the grant is supporting 24 programs across our state and special projects that focus on increasing victim service. Also, through a partnership with the Arizona Administrative Office of the Courts, we invested in the creation of the Arizona Protective Order Initiative and Notification Tool, AZ Point, which was launched in January 2020. AZ Point allows victims to quickly and accurately submit paperwork electronically to an Arizona court to stop a person from committing domestic violence or from contacting individuals that are protected by this order. And in 2019, with additional investments, we led a creation of a training program specifically designed for law enforcement and criminal justice audiences through New Life Center. To date, New Life Center has trained over 400 individuals in best practices on how to recognize and respond to sexual assault. We all have a role in making the Lighting Arizona Purple campaign a success, but this year is of particular importance and meaning to me, as we have partnered with the Arizona Department of Child Safety and the Arizona Coalition to End Sexual and Domestic Violence to have targeted conversations on ways that we can all improve the way that we serve families affected by domestic violence. So I want to thank Director Faust and Executive Director Jenna Panis for their partnership and their commitment to these ongoing conversations on how we can improve how we serve children in homes impacted by domestic violence. Lighting Arizona Purple is a statewide initiative, and it wouldn't be possible without the support from our state, county, and local agencies who have partnered to amplify prevention effort and support services to those who need it most. For everyone here tonight, thank you. We appreciate your solidarity and your support for survivors of domestic violence and your dedication to domestic violence awareness and prevention. We have been overwhelmed by the support that we have received for this campaign over the last 7 years. Even during the unprecedented challenges that we saw the last 18 months, it was moving to see Arizonans rallying together to show support and continue to provide and deliver services and resources to those who need it the most. Arizona is working together to meet and strengthen prevention efforts and support for survivors as they go on this healing journey. It is now my distinct honor to introduce to you my dear friend, partner, and colleague, Director Mike Faust. Director Faust has been leading the Department of Child Safety since 2019, and his passion and deep understanding of child protection and child well-being has led to better outcomes for thousands of vulnerable Arizona children, and especially those in the foster care system. It's by my privilege to work by Director Faust, and I want to thank you for your ongoing support, not just you, but everyone at the Department of Child Safety, and your leadership on this issue is excellent. Thank you. Mike.
Good evening. I have this belief that we've been provided enough resources to solve every problem that's in the world. And the challenge for us as people is to be the connectors to bring those together. Maria Fuentes and the team at the Governor's Office of Youth, Faith, and Family are those connectors. So thank you, Maria, for all that you do. I appreciate the opportunity to speak tonight. Like many of you here, domestic violence is part of too many of our personal stories. We're here tonight in a show of unity to bring awareness to help break the vicious cycle of domestic violence that permeates too many families. And for too many people, domestic violence is just part of their version of normal. As I prepared for this discussion tonight, I could not remove the sounds and the sights and the emotions that children experience when they live in a home where domestic violence occurs. You see, right now, there's a young boy not far from here getting ready for bed, going through his normal, regular evening routine, brushing his teeth, reading a book, and laying down for what he hopes is a quiet night's sleep. Regretfully, tonight, he will be jarred awake by the crash of a broken dish, a knocked-over chair, and shouts that far too frequently wake him. Maybe tonight it will end with just that, but anxiety and fear fills his thoughts. He can hear his sibling lightly crying in the bed next to him as he slides over to comfort him and tell him to go back to sleep. Don't worry, he tells his sibling. Just cover your ears and it will end soon. But he doesn't know if that's true, or if it'll get worse tonight like it has so many times before. And heaven forbid he should go to that bedroom door and open it and yell at the aggressor to stop, because that ended so badly last time. This may be your story, and this may be why you're here, raising awareness because you were either the boy in the story or the fearful sibling or the victim adult in the other room. And your goal at this point is to intercede, to protect, and to break the cycle of violence. If you were previously the aggressor in this story, I applaud you for being here and bringing awareness to the healing and change that's possible. Making meaningful change in this family requires not only individual healing and treatment, but familial treatment and healing. The last 18 months have been far too difficult on all of us. Many good parents and otherwise fantastic partners have not been the best versions of themselves through these strenuous times. For those who already struggle with mental health, substance use, and/or domestic violence, the pressures that ignite those challenges have only gotten worse. Whether law enforcement, child protection, or crisis response, we've all seen an increase in domestic violence. In fact, 1 out of every 4 children reported to the Department of Child Safety has been exposed to domestic violence. Now the challenge we face collectively is, as we show unity and awareness, is to be a connector. As connectors, how do we identify the resources and programs that attempt to bring forth change? How do we prioritize the programs showing the most promise? How do we fully resource the programs directly intervening and supporting families? How do we connect the proper treatments to address the traumatized, the victimized, and the aggressors to bring forth family healing instead of separating and wondering why they return to broken relationships? I'm hopeful that you leave this evening with a renewed spirit and commitment to not only maintain current relationships, but to build new ones with others who commit to making immediate, lasting improvements that help families break the cycle of domestic violence. Thank you.
I had the privilege of working for about 10 years for a child welfare foundation, and I worked in more than half the states from across the country, and I'm always in awe to have the privilege in this state to have a director of child welfare and child protection that understands these issues in such a dynamic and deep way, and so I'm very grateful that you're our director and that you're here. Next, I am very excited to introduce our next speaker because we all know that domestic violence affects an entire family unit. We're creating future generations of Arizonans who may potentially learn to accept unhealthy habits in their own relationships through their experiences at home. And to speak on behalf of Arizona's youth, we are joined today by a member of our Governor's Youth Commission, who has served on the council since 2019, and she's our current president. Delaney is a senior at Vista Grande High School in Casa Grande. During her first year as commissioner, she served on the Human Trafficking Prevention Work Group, giving her the experience she needed to serve as the chair of the Domestic Violence Work Group during her second year. As chair of this work group, she led the group in hosting a hygiene product drive and coordinating the donation of items to domestic violence shelters in several counties throughout the state. And this year, she has honored us in taking the role of president of the Governor's Youth Commission. Please join me in welcoming Delaney Dickey.
Domestic violence. When teens hear those words, we usually associate it with an issue arising between parents in a home, because predominantly these are the conversations had and normalized through our exposure of social media and entertainment. However, the reaches of domestic violence extend a much greater surface and expose an ugly truth that affects our teen populace. Over 1.5 million teenage boys and girls are physically harmed in relationships each year. These numbers only confirm that there's a lack of education in schools and households. The conversations need to start. The taboo of teen dating violence needs to be lifted. Our teens need to learn about healthy relationships, warning flags for dating trouble, and how to get help for themselves and their peers. Teenagers are being roped into toxic relationships and tricked into thinking that what they are experiencing is acceptable or something cute. Things that were once seen as destructive and wrong have become normalized parts of teen relationships. Popular shows and social media platforms are feeding our students lies about what is healthy in teen dating relationships. This starts with a simple act of location sharing on social media. With one click of a button, you are accountable for your global positioning to somebody else. Knowing passwords and letting your partner read your text messages have become essential aspects in relationships that teenagers consider strong. If you have nothing to hide, why not let the person of your dreams go through your phone? These behaviors are common chatter around lunch tables and courtyards in high school. This has caused confusion and blurred lines between cute acts of puppy love and controlling behaviors that may lead to dangerous territories. Teenagers are often overlooked. We aren't children to be coddled, and many of us are still finding our own way. And we still need guidance. Although we seem to have it all figured out, and most of us claim to, we are running with limited information that we are given, and these real-world, hard topics tend to be pushed aside for easier discussions of standardized testing or planning of the homecoming dance. How are we expected to know the difference between what is cute and controlling if we haven't been taught? Last year, the Arizona Governor's Youth Commission Domestic Violence Prevention Work Group, made up of myself and 6 other high school students, fielded this very topic. For each of us, this was the first time investing any time in this topic. Our parents hadn't opened those doors of conversation, and beyond the gossip in the hallways, no one at school addressed it either. Yet all of us knew someone who was taking steps into unhealthy relationship behaviors. Empowered and wanting to make a change, the Prevention Work Group hosted a drive in multiple counties across the state, including Pinal, Greenlee, Yuma, Maricopa, and Pima, to spark the interest and ignite conversation that teen dating violence is happening and teen dating violence is dangerous. By the end of April, the work group collected 5,719 items, amounting to over $19,500 in monetary value, all of which were donated to domestic violence shelters across the state. This project allowed us a platform within our schools and communities to bring for the truth and allow teens to question, resulting with teen dating violence peaking from the taboo and entering our everyday language. Only 1 in every 3 students that are being abused seek help or talk to someone about the violence. Teens need the tools to be successful. They need the knowledge of healthy versus toxic, and they need to know where to get help. We need to normalize these conversations to support the next generation of leaders in Arizona. During October, the Lighting Arizona Purple campaign expresses how incredibly important it is for parents to talk to their children, especially teenagers who are new to dating, about the importance of healthy relationships. A study by Love is Respect shows that 81% of parents don't believe that teen dating violence is an issue, and 82% of parents are confident that if their children were being abused, they would go to them. It's an awkward conversation to be had by parents and by teenagers that both will dread having. Teens are going to date. It's important that these teens recognize the right from the wrong, the good from the bad, and most importantly, the difference between what is cute and what is toxic.
Thank you, Delaney. I really am grateful for your voice and to have the voice of the youth voices here, especially with our focus on children, and not just children, but very soon to be young adults. I think it's important for all of us to remember teen dating violence and the narrative and what we're normalizing for teenagers across our state. Now I have a slight change in our program. Unfortunately, Jenna Panis, who is the executive director of ACES DV, couldn't be here with us today. Everyone is safe and okay, but she had a family emergency that took her away. So I will be playing the role of moderator, and my two colleagues will join me to have an ongoing conversation about what are we talking about when we talk about children and families impacted by domestic violence. I'll be joined by Catherine Guffey, who is the executive consultant to the director of the Department of Child Safety, and Linda Scott, who serves as the vice president of Child and Family Services at Jewish Family Children's Services. This is a conversation that we will have here with you today. You can come on up. But one that This is not the first time we're having this conversation, and it's not going to be the last time that we have this conversation. This panel is a reflection of ongoing conversations that we're having in child protection, in domestic violence service spaces, because we know we want to work better together to improve how we serve families that are affected by domestic violence. Hi, thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Maria.
So if you can, I introduced you a little bit, but if you want to share with us a little bit about you and your roles and what you do.
Sure. My name is Linda Scott. I'm a social worker, and I work for Jewish Family and Children's Service, as Maria said. And I oversee one of our program divisions, which is responsible for both our domestic violence programs and our programs for families who are involved with the Department of Child Safety.
Hi, I'm Catherine Guffey. I'm consultant to the Director Faust at DCS, and also a social worker with about 30 years experience at Arizona Department of Child Safety, developing programs, policy, and services for families.
Thank you for being here. Catherine, can you share a little bit about how you have seen domestic violence impact families, parents, and children that you work with from the department's perspective?
Sure. You know, every year 1,400 children come into foster care because of concerns about domestic violence in Arizona. And, I think that our caseworkers share some of the common misperceptions about domestic violence, things like that, perpetrators are evil people who can't change, that victims would leave if they would just put their children first, and that they could leave if they wanted to. And I think caseworkers worry that victims aren't powerful enough to be able to consistently protect their children. And so too often the solution that they see is to tell victims to get an order of protection, tell perpetrators to stay away from their family indefinitely, and maybe bring children into foster care. So that has a devastating experience for everybody. It's difficult for victims who feel like they're being punished, difficult for perpetrators who feel like they don't that they don't have a way back to their family and the help to change. And for children who are, fearful about the safety of their parents and their siblings and wondering if they'll ever be able to go home.
Thank you. That's amazing perspective. Linda, what impact have we seen or have you seen on domestic violence incidents given the pandemic? How has that impacted this conversation?
There's been significant impact because of the pandemic. It has exacerbated situations for families that create additional stress and perpetuate existing violence and make new violence a possibility. Things like isolation, unemployment, which brings tremendous financial stress, all kinds of economic issues. It's been very difficult for survivors to reach out for help during the pandemic. Just because people are at home with their family, people have lost jobs, and it's just made it very difficult. We're seeing far more mental health concerns and bigger mental health concerns, greater increased level of violence in incidents, increased lethality. So there's been reverberating effects of the pandemic throughout the community and whole families.
And to follow up on that a little bit and the points that Catherine was making earlier, what, just from a service provider's point of view, you serve kind of both ends, what are some of the misconceptions that you see related to how domestic violence impacts families?
So Catherine touched on a couple of them. The idea that somebody can leave, it somehow is their fault for staying. That's a serious misconception that is still very prevalent today. We see a lot of victim blaming. It's really important to keep the focus on the person doing harm and on accountability there. I think sometimes we think that children are in a hurry to get away from the offending parent, and that's not necessarily true. That relationship may have positive aspects for that child. The idea that if we break up the family, that's going to make it better is a misconception. In a lot of situations, the bond with the non-offending parent is actually a protective factor against or in promoting future outcomes. And so it's really important to be able to provide safety and security and keep children and non-offending parents together.
So when we think about how we serve families and children, whether it's in child well-being, child protection, domestic violence, you think of the whole continuum, right, of services, prevention, intervention, survivor supports. From both of your perspectives, and you toss a coin who goes first, but what are some opportunities that we have in Arizona? What are some gaps, some areas where we can strengthen our continuum of services so that we can best address some of the challenges that we are seeing?
Well, I see 4 opportunities that the Department of Child Safety is working on. And first of those is increasing our DCS specialists' knowledge about domestic violence. Helping them to, helping their skill, particularly in assessing child safety in these situations, which can be difficult, and then knowing how to manage those dangers in a way that hopefully can keep children at home or get them home quickly to a parent. I think most importantly, we can help our staff to develop child safety plans that don't just monitor families, but provide adults and resources that support them to be successful, so that they feel competent and confident in their ability to provide safety and stability for their children on an ongoing basis. One of the other things we're doing is increasing access to new services through the department that address the needs of families experiencing domestic violence, things like social connections, empathy for their children, parenting, day-to-day parenting stress, concrete resources. All of these are important to these families. And so we've just started these programs recently. The providers are trauma the services are trauma-informed, and so we need to now provide some more experience for these and knowledge for these providers about domestic violence and making sure they know what services are available so they can connect families to that. Third, knowing that 75% of our domestic violence reports come from law enforcement, we need to collaborate with law enforcement in the courts so that we're providing a consistent approach and a new way of helping these families so that we avoid foster care. And lastly, I would say developing formal relationships between the provider community and DCS so that we can encourage the use of evidence-based programs, particularly programs to support and help perpetrators of domestic violence, and provide easier access for DCS specialists so they can quickly connect families we serve to those services.
Excellent. Linda?
Yeah, so it is a wonderful step forward, I think, that the Department of Child Safety is taking those kinds of steps. And it provides a real opportunity for building stronger relationships and collaboration with the domestic violence providers, both for DCS case specialists who are out doing the work, and also to make sure that the folks providing the new evidence-based programs that the department is talking about understand and have access to all of the resources that are available. I think the continued development of trauma-informed responses, both inside DCS and out in the provider community, is a current opportunity because the conversation is open, right? And there's a way forward for that, and that is a fantastic thing because it's that collaboration is what's going to bring increased services, better services, and stronger families.
That's excellent. Thank you. And we're talking a lot, I mean, domestic violence doesn't just affect parents and children, and we have teens that are affected, and we have individuals, we have just intimate partner violence in general. We just happen to have a focus today on parents. And so just, again, from a service provider's perspective, what help is available now? If there are parents who are experiencing domestic violence, who may be involved with DCS, who are concerned that if they ask for help, they could end up involved with DCS, because I think the goal that we're all trying to work towards on the domestic violence provider side, on the DCS side, is we want healthy, safe families. And so what could parents do now? What could be available for them?
So there are domestic violence crisis shelters in almost every county in Arizona, and actually most of those service providers now who traditionally have provided crisis shelter are also providing additional services. There's been a real expansion in the availability of community mobile-based services. There's transitional housing in some of those agencies. And, you know, there's a whole spectrum of services available, including counseling, not just for the parent, but also for children. Assistance for parents in dealing with the kinds of behaviors that might crop up in children once somebody has left a relationship and you start to see some safety, and then there's the ability to have room to act out, right? And that creates a challenge for parents. There's help with that. Job readiness. Assistance finding education and funds to pay for education to be able to provide financial security for families. General advocacy, lay legal advocacy is something that is tremendously in need and is available at almost all the domestic violence provider agencies in the state. Support groups are available, prevalent, and accessible. All of these things are provided and available without charge, and there are some programs also for offending parents in the state of Arizona. And so there's a lot of service available. It has been in tremendous need in this last year and a half in particular. And it's just really, it's so critical that people know where to go for help. And it's one of the reasons that this event is so important, because it brings awareness and uplifts the tremendous work that domestic violence provider agencies are doing each and every day.
Thank you, and that's 100%. I mean, that's correct. We hear so often of people that are struggling, are in these situations, and they don't know what to do, and it's a very scary and daunting thing. You're afraid your family is going to get broken up. You're afraid your children will get taken away, and we really wanted today to be a public continuation of the conversation that is happening.
And I should add to my last response, Maria, and that is that the Arizona Coalition to End Sexual and Domestic Violence does operate a helpline that is a tremendous resource for people. Their website and their helpline is there for anybody in this state anytime as a starting place if they need it.
Absolutely, and they're a tremendous partner. I'm sorry that Jenna couldn't be here today, but her leadership of ACES-DV and the amazing team she has, they've really been very helpful to our conversations generally on domestic violence, but also the conversations we've been having with DCS. And so to that point, moving forward, this really for both of you, as we're trying to continue to build this strong continuum of services and build the bridges between the different systems that serve families, what does the next year look like as we expand on these partnerships that are really striving to have safe and healthy homes and communities?
Well, I think, we started a purposeful dialogue with provider community about what are the needs of families and what's the capacity with the current services to meet those needs. I think that one of the things I'm looking forward to in this year is starting with some reflection about how the DCS focus on child safety and the provider focus on victim safety sometimes puts us at odds with each other. And I think if we, continue having the conversation and understand why we have those perspectives, we can change and come together to have a shared focus on families rather than victims versus children. And so I think, again, strengthening the services that we have, particularly those evidence-based services, will be important in the next year, ultimately with the vision that fewer children come into care even for a day.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is this Department of Child Safety, I've been in this business for a long time, and this Department of Child Safety is taking steps in directions that a lot of us in the community have been wanting for a long time, and so I'm grateful. And I know a lot of people are grateful for that collaboration and partnership, and that's key to where we go moving forward, because Catherine's absolutely right. It is through that kind of conversation and increased relationship building with the service providers and the department that we're going to do a much better job as a much more comprehensive system. Mm-hmm. And so thank you, and thank you, Director Faust. I think that there will be continued support for the department. There has been a long history of the Coalition to End Sexual and Domestic Violence providing training at the department, and I think that'll probably expand as we move forward. And I think that the new case management model that's been solicited out to the provider community and the one you're working on internally is going to do a better job at addressing the whole family. So not just seeing people as victims and perpetrators, but what does everybody need, and how do we get it for them? And I think that is a direction that we have not done a particularly good job of in the past as a whole community, and so I'm excited about that. I think there's a real opportunity also for increasing the service availability and the kinds of services that are available to the offending parent. There's some very good ones in this state, but I don't think there's enough, and I don't think people know about them well enough, and I don't think they're easily available all the time. So lots of opportunity.
Thank you so much, and I really appreciate that. And I think, perhaps for those of us that have worked in the child protection spaces and or the domestic violence spaces, we see the incredible opportunity and leadership that we're seeing from both sectors coming here together today. But we're very excited and really honored to have leaders that are willing to do that in these two spaces, because this is not a usual thing. It's a needed thing. It's an important thing, and I'm just very grateful to all of you for having this conversation. There's a lot to do on both fronts, but this is a conversation that we need to come together on and have some common solutions and goals. And so I thank you both for having this conversation with all of Arizona, and look forward to the continuing conversations and getting the work done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. See that mic switching happens. Thanks, guys. Okay. Well, that was, I mean, I'm very grateful for those, both of those ladies and to Jenna, who I know is watching, and to Director Faust. We've had a lot of these conversations, and we're just getting started on what this work can and will look like for future generations of Arizonans, and making sure that that ongoing improvement on the work that we do, which is something the governor is adamant that we continue to look at how we serve and what we do, and that continuous improvement piece is an absolute priority of his. And so grateful to all of my colleagues who are here and others who aren't, that they take that very, very seriously. And I hope this helps children and families across our state. So now it really is my deep pleasure to introduce to you Melissa Zimmerman. Melissa is joining us here. She lives in Phoenix with her daughter, and she was twice involved with the Department of Child Safety. And she's here to share with us some of her story. She is currently a recovery coach for Teros Health, working in the Families First program, and she works with Teros, with parents, alongside DCS, to help families reunite with their children, which is something that is a deep passion of mine, supporting birth parents, supporting reunification whenever possible. I know it's an area Director Faust knows we need to continue to do better on, because we can do better. And so she works in that special and crucial space of helping individuals and families navigate the very, very complicated public health and child protective systems in Arizona. She has a bachelor's degree of science in criminal justice and is an Arizona certified peer support specialist. She's a member of DCS's Parents Advisory Collaborative and the statewide SENS training for Arizona. Nationally, she's on the Friends Parent Advisory Council, Birth and Foster Parent Partnership, and the Birth Parent National Network. So she is very busy using her lived experience, her training, and her profession to help parents and families, not just in Arizona, but across the state. Her story reminds us of how important this work is and how we can all work together to impact the lives of survivors, families, and communities. So it's really an honor to have you here, Melissa, and I'm very grateful that you're here to share your story, because your voice is going to be a powerful and valuable impact to so many.
Hi, my name is Melissa Zimmerman, and I'm a person in recovery and a survivor of domestic violence. I started using drugs when I was just graduated from high school, and you'd wonder why I thought would wait till then. My mother was dying of cancer, and I was living on my own with no one really to talk to. If you were to see me on the streets, you would never have known that I was using drugs. I looked just like you. The only difference is that I used drugs. I worked, I went to school, I participated in life. No one knew that I used except for the ones I used with. That is, until I became pregnant. This was my first encounter with CPS, and I say CPS because it was in 2008, prior to the current department. The case was closed. My daughter was born substance exposed to meth, and somehow I managed to complete treatment and get my case closed within 6 months. The domestic violence that was occurring in my house was swept under the rug and not really talked about. And we just wanted to get CPS out of our lives. 3 years later, I got another case with CPS because I called the police on my daughter's dad. He'd thrown a printer at me. And I'd learned from my previous treatment that that was considered domestic violence and that should not be happening. Of course, the police came and they called CPS, and they were back in my life. This time it was for domestic violence, and because I tested positive for meth again. This time I did things differently. I was present, and I participated in all services, including recovery maintenance, and I talked about the domestic violence. My case closed in 2015. My daughter has been home since April of 2015. Today I have 8 years and 9 months clean for meth. My daughter's been home like I said, since 2015. I have a fiance that loves us both very dearly, and we live and participate in life. What I do, I help others who are experiencing substance use and domestic violence. I encourage them to talk about it, talk about what's going on, to help them with learning the red flags and making a plan to leave. This is not just for women, but for men as well. I share my experience, strength, and hope with parents who are involved with the Department of Child Safety, helping them reunite with their kids. As mentioned before, I'm a part of the Arizona Parent Advisory Collaborative for the state of Arizona through the Office of Prevention, helping DCS help parents. Some of the accomplishments are the parent page on the DCS website to help parents who are involved with DCS and get more information on how to successfully close their case. We have a newsletter that is sent out to DCS staff. As mentioned before, I'm a part of the National Parent Partnership called the Birth and Foster Parent Partnership. We've created tools not just for parents and foster parents, but for the state leads to form that relationship early on during the case to help reunify earlier rather than later. As mentioned before, I'm part of the National Parent Advisory called Friends. This stands for Family Resource Information, Education, and Network Development Service. I have received my master's in criminal justice, and I'm currently now in my second master's program for social work. Lastly, no matter what your situation, you can recover and be a survivor. Thank you.
Thank you, Melissa. And thank you for your courage in sharing your story tonight. Your strength and your advocacy efforts are not just impactful, but motivational, and really important, I think, for parents in either substance abuse or domestic violence or any situation where they're caring for our kids, and everyone struggles in some way or another. But to have a parent example of someone who went through it, came out the other side, double masters, working on all of these different fronts, that is more powerful often than any service or policy that we could come up, because that you are the light at the end of that tunnel that they may find themselves in. And so thank you for that. I want to thank everyone for being here as we're coming to a close and our dome is finally purple in the dark. Lighting Arizona Purple has always centered on providing an opportunity for communities to come together, to have these conversations. Some of these are very difficult conversations, and I think this month and this event and the events that follow offer that space. I want to thank everyone who spoke tonight, in particular Melissa, for lending us her voice and her story. We are very, very grateful for the work that everybody does, and tonight is a celebration and a thank you, but also a reminder that we have a lot of more work to do. The Capitol Dome will continue to be lit for the remainder of October. It'll be purple for us as a reminder of our continued commitment to all of this work and effort. To any of you out there who are suffering from any form of domestic violence, abuse or degrading talk, verbal threats, intimidation, control, forced isolation, physical violence of any kind, emotional, verbal abuse, please reach out and ask for help. Linda shared the ACES DV resources. Our office also has resources on the website. There is help, or if you suspect that somebody who is close to you, a family member or a friend, may need help, you can also call and say, this is what I'm seeing, and what could I do? There's a lot of amazing people in this state with a lot of experience, lived experience, professional experience that can help us get the help we need and help us help each other. So with that, I will close and thank everyone for being here, for the amazing work, and I look forward to doing this again with you all next year.